Fuel metering. 1. For what primary purpose is a turbine engine fuel control unit trimmed? To obtain maximum thrust output when desired. 2. The function of the altitude compensating, or aneroid valve used with the Teledyne Continental fuel injection system on many turbocharged engines is to prevent an overly rich mixture during sudden acceleration. 3. In order to stabilize chems, springs, and linkages within the fuel control, manufacturers generally recommend that all final turbine engine trim adjustments be made in the increased direction. 4. What carburetor component actually limits the desired maximum airflow to the engine at full throttle? Venturi. 5. The fuel metering force of a conventional float-type carburetor in its normal operating range is the difference between the pressure acting on the discharge nozzle located within the venturi and the pressure acting on the fuel in the float chamber. 6. An aircraft should be facing into the wind when trimming an engine. However, if the velocity of the wind blowing into the intake is excessive, it is likely to cause a false high compression and turbine discharge pressure, and a subsequent low trim. 7. To determine the float level in a float-type carburetor, a measurement is usually made from the top of the fuel in the float chamber to the parting surface of the carburetor. 8. The economizer system of a float-type carburetor performs which of the following functions? It supplies and regulates the additional fuel required for all engine speeds above cruising. 9. Idle cutoff is accomplished on a carburetor equipped with a back suction mixture control by introducing low-pressure intake manifold air into the float chamber. 10. During idle mixture adjustments, which of the following is normally observed to determine when the correct mixture has been achieved? Changes in RPM or manifold pressure. 11. An aircraft carburetor is equipped with a mixture control in order to prevent the mixture from becoming too rich at high altitudes. 12. The use of less than normal throttle opening during starting will cause a rich mixture. 13. When troubleshooting an engine for too rich a mixture to allow the engine to idle, what would be a possible cause? A primer line open. 14. If the idling jet becomes clogged in a float-type carburetor, the engine will not idle. 15. Which of the following is not a function of the carburetor venturi? Regulates the idle system. 16. When checking the idle mixture on a carburetor, the engine should be idling normally, then pull the mixture control toward the idle cutoff position. A correct idling mixture will be indicated by an increase of 10 to 50 RPM before decreasing. 17. The active clearance control (ACC) portion of an EC system aids turbine engine efficiency by ensuring turbine blade to engine case clearances are kept to a minimum by controlling case temperatures. 18. What is the possible cause of an engine running rich at full throttle if it is equipped with a float-type carburetor? Clogged main air bleed. 19. What carburetor component measures the amount of air delivered to the engine? Venturi. 20. An indication that the optimum idle mixture has been obtained occurs when the mixture control is moved to idle cutoff and manifold pressure decreases and RPM increases momentarily before the engine ceases to fire. 21. What are the positions of the pressurization valve and the dump valve in a jet engine fuel system when the engine is shut down? Pressurization valve closed, dump valve open. 22. Generally, the practice when trimming an engine is to turn all accessory bleed air off. 1. The mixture used at rated power in air-cooled reciprocating engines is richer than the mixture used through the normal cruising range. 2. The mixture used at idle in air-cooled reciprocating engines is richer than the mixture used at rated power. Regarding the above statements, both number 1 and number 2 are true. 23. An aircraft engine equipped with a pressure-type carburetor is started with the primer while the mixture control is positioned at idle cutoff. 24. A supervisory electronic engine control (EEC) is a system that receives engine operating information and adjusts the standard hydromechanical fuel control unit to obtain the most effective engine operation. 25. Why must a float-type carburetor supply a rich mixture during idle? Because at idling speeds the engine may not have enough airflow around the cylinders to provide proper cooling. 26. The generally acceptable way to obtain accurate on-site temperature prior to performing engine trimming is to hang the thermometer in the shade of the nose wheel well until the temperature reading stabilizes. 27. The economizer system in a float-type carburetor increases the fuel-air ratio at high power settings. 28. One purpose of an air bleed in a float-type carburetor is to decrease fuel density and destroy surface tension. 29. What is the relationship between the pressure existing within the throat of a venturi and the velocity of the air passing through the venturi? The pressure is inversely proportional to the velocity. 30. An aircraft engine continuous cylinder fuel injection system normally discharges fuel during which stroke s all continuously. 31. Select the statement which is correct relating to a fuel level check of a float-type carburetor. Do not measure the level at the edge of the float chamber. 32. If an engine is equipped with a float-type carburetor and the engine runs excessively rich at full throttle, a possible cause of the trouble is a clogged main air bleed. 33. One of the best ways to increase engine power and control detonation and pre-ignition is to use water injection. 34. How will the mixture of an engine be affected if the bellows of the automatic mixture control (AMC) in a pressure carburetor ruptures while the engine is operating at altitude? It will become richer. 35. If an aircraft engine is equipped with a carburetor that is not compensated for altitude and temperature variations, the fuel-air mixture will become richer as either the altitude or temperature increases. 36. What corrective action should be taken when a carburetor is found to be leaking fuel from the discharge nozzle? Replace the needle valve and seat. 37. Which type of fuel control is used on most of today's turbine engines? Hydromechanical or electronic? 38. What is the purpose of the carburetor accelerating system? Temporarily enrich the mixture when the throttle is suddenly opened. 39. A punctured float in a float-type carburetor will cause the fuel level to rise and enrich the mixture. 40. A reciprocating engine automatic mixture control responds to changes in air density caused by changes in altitude or temperature. 41. What occurs when a back suction type mixture control is placed in idle cutoff? The float chamber will be vented to a negative pressure area. 42. One of the things a metering orifice in a main air bleed helps to accomplish at a given altitude in a carburetor is better fuel vaporization and control of fuel discharge, especially at lower engine speeds. 43. In a supervisory EEC system, any fault in the EEC that adversely affects engine operation causes an immediate reversion to control by the hydromechanical fuel control unit. 44. During the operation of an aircraft engine, the pressure drop in the carburetor venturi depends primarily upon the air velocity. 45. When trimming a turbine engine, the fuel control is adjusted to set idle RPM and maximum speed or EPR. 46. Which statement is correct regarding a continuous flow fuel injection system used on many reciprocating engines? Fuel is injected at each cylinder intake port. 47. Refer to Figure 6, which curve most nearly represents an aircraft engine's fuel-air ratio throughout its operating range. 2. 48. The density of air is very important when mixing fuel and air to obtain a correct fuel-to-air ratio. Which of the following weighs the most? 100 parts of dry air. 49. On a float-type carburetor, the purpose of the economizer valve is to provide a richer mixture and cooling at maximum power output. 50. If the main air bleed of a float-type carburetor becomes clogged, the engine will run rich at rated power. 51. When a new carburetor is installed on an engine, and the engine is warmed up to normal temperatures, adjust the idle mixture, then the idle speed. 52. The device that controls the ratio of the fuel-air mixture to the cylinders is called a mixture control. 53. Float-type carburetors which are equipped with economizers are normally set for their leanest practical mixture delivery at cruising speeds and enriched by means of the economizer system at higher power settings. 54. If a float-type carburetor leaks fuel when the engine is stopped, a likely cause is that the float needle valve is worn or otherwise not seated properly. 55. Select the correct statement concerning the idle system of a conventional float-type carburetor. The low pressure between the edges of the throttle valve and the throttle body pulls the fuel from the idle passage. 56. Detonation occurs when the fuel-air mixture burns too fast. 57. What component is used to ensure fuel delivery during periods of rapid engine acceleration? Acceleration pump. 58. Reciprocating engine power will be decreased at all altitudes if the humidity is increased. 59. The fuel level within the float chamber of a properly adjusted float-type carburetor will be slightly lower than the discharge nozzle outlet. 60. Which of the following causes a single diaphragm accelerator pump to discharge fuel? An increase in manifold pressure that occurs when the throttle valve is opened. 61. A 9-cylinder radial engine, using the multiple-point priming system with a central spider, will prime which cylinders? 1, 2, 3, 8, and 9. 62. What could cause a lean mixture and high cylinder head temperature at sea level or low altitudes? Automatic mixture control stuck in the extended position. 63. The device that controls the volume of the fuel-air mixture to the cylinders is called a throttle valve. 64. Which of the following is least likely to occur during operation of an engine equipped with a direct cylinder fuel injection system? Backfiring. 65. The metered fuel pressure, chamber C, in an injection-type carburetor is held constant throughout the entire engine operating range. 66. What is the relationship between the accelerating pump and the enrichment valve in a pressure injection carburetor? No relationship since they operate independently. 67. The back suction mixture control system operates by varying the pressure acting on the fuel in the float chamber. 68. Which of the following is not an input parameter for a turbine engine fuel control unit? Ambient humidity. 69. The primary purpose of the air bleed openings used with continuous flow fuel injector nozzles is to aid in proper fuel vaporization. 70. Under which of the following conditions will the trimming of a turbine engine be most accurate? No wind and low moisture. 71. The desired engine idle speed and mixture setting is adjusted with engine warmed up and operating. 72. Fuel is discharged for idling speeds on a float-type carburetor from the idle discharge nozzle. 73. A full authority electronic engine control (EC) is a system that receives all the necessary data for engine operation and develops the commands to various actuators to control engine parameters. 74. What is a function of the idling air bleed in a float-type carburetor? It aids in emulsifying vaporizing the fuel at idle speeds. 75. What effect does high atmospheric humidity have on the operation of a jet engine? Has little or no effect. 76. If a float-type carburetor becomes flooded, the condition is most likely caused by a leaking needle valve and seat assembly. 77. What will occur if the vapor vent float in a pressure carburetor loses its buoyancy? The amount of fuel returning to the fuel tank from the carburetor will be increased. 78. The purpose of the back suction mixture control in a float-type carburetor is to adjust the mixture by regulating the pressure on the fuel in the float chamber. 79. A major difference between the Teledyne Continental and RSA, Precision Aeromotive or Bendix, continuous flow fuel injection systems and fuel metering is that the Continental system uses fuel pressure only as a metering force. 80. During engine operation, if carburetor heat is applied, it will decrease the air density to the carburetor. 81. In turbine engines that utilize a pressurization and dump valve, the dump portion of the valve drains the engine manifold lines to prevent fuel boiling and subsequent deposits in the lines as a result of residual engine heat at engine shutdown. 82. A carburetor is prevented from leaning out during quick acceleration by the accelerating system. 83. What method is ordinarily used to make idle speed adjustments on a float-type carburetor? An adjustable throttle stop or linkage. 84. Which method is commonly used to adjust the level of a float in a float-type carburetor? Add or remove shims under the needle valve seat. 85. On an engine equipped with a pressure-type carburetor, fuel supply and the idling range is ensured by the inclusion in the carburetor of a spring in the unmetered fuel chamber to supplement the action of normal metering forces. 86. The throttle valve of float-type aircraft carburetors is located between the venturi and the engine. 87. When air passes through the venturi of a carburetor, what three changes occur? Velocity increases, temperature decreases, and pressure decreases. 88. What should be changed to ensure the validity of a turbine engine performance check if an alternate fuel is to be used? Fuel-specific gravity setting. 89. On a carburetor without an automatic mixture control as you ascend to altitude, the mixture will be enriched. 90. Where is the throttle valve located on a float-type carburetor? After the main discharge nozzle and venturi. 91. If the volume of air passing through a carburetor venturi is reduced, the pressure at the venturi throat will increase. 92. What factor is not used in the operation of an aircraft gas turbine engine fuel control unit? Mixture control position. 93. Under which of the following conditions would an engine run lean even though there is a normal amount of fuel present? Incomplete fuel vaporization. 94. A mixture ratio of 11:1 normally refers to 1 part fuel to 11 parts air. 95. An excessively lean fuel-air mixture may cause an increase in cylinder head temperature. 96. Which of the following best describes the function of an altitude mixture control? Regulates the richness of the fuel-air charge entering the engine. 97. At what engine speed does the main metering jet actually function as a metering jet in a float-type carburetor? All RPMs above idle range.